911, what's the location of your emergency?
Yeah, I'm dealing with some severe mental illness. And I'm going to go out there and just start shooting anything that looks like a Muslim.
Sir? Sir? Okay.
It's no secret that America just elected Donald Trump. And the rhetoric and the way that it's evoking certain ideas and certain symbols.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
And developing from that a very, very powerful and in many ways very dangerous rhetoric. I think you could say in a way the dogs have been unleashed, as it were.
Investigations are underway into possible hate crimes against Muslims.
Yes, I was calling with respect to the event on the 23rd and 24th of October. I'm going to personally have a militia that's going to come down to your Islamic society, firebomb you, shoot whoever's there on site in the head. I don't care if they're 2 years old or 100. I'm over your shit, and the whole country is.
Many of us, and definitely our parents, already know those dogs. We're familiar with those dogs, and they've been dogs that have been barking for a very, very long time. Those of us who've grown up, say those of us born in the 70s and lived through the 80s and 90s, and definitely our parents and their parents, can remember darker and more difficult times in American history.
The injustice that has been inflicted upon Negroes in this country by Uncle Sam is criminal.
They had difficult times, and they went through more difficulties, I believe, than we did, which is why there's a great protection and there's a benefit and a blessing in following the legacy of the people who've gone before us and looking at, hey, this is where they had success, this is where they fell short, and honoring that, but benefiting from it. Respectfully, if people think that Trump is the worst thing that's ever happened in American history, it worries me about what may happen in the future. It may get darker, it may get more difficult, there may be very, very difficult times, and what did the Prophet ﷺ say? He said for a person to maintain their religion at the end of time will be like someone holding onto a hot coal. Just imagine for a moment that police begin shooting Muslims in broad daylight, indiscriminately. Imagine that Muslims begin to get incarcerated in disproportionate numbers. And in interesting ways, you start to imagine that, you say, wow, that sounds strangely familiar. That sounds a lot like what communities of color have been dealing with in America since its inception. And I think that there's a very, very real extent to which our inability to identify with that struggle has to do with some levels of classism and some levels of racism, and maybe just some insensitivity that prevents people from identifying with the struggle of their brothers and sisters. The largest subset of our community that has historically and even contemporarily embraced Islam are communities of color, and more specifically the Black American community. And it's just fascinating that it's like, why can't we have the power brokers? Why can't we just have that? Because Allah didn't will that. What Allah willed is that the people who are poor and disenfranchised and marginalized and kicked down and downtrodden, that they're the people who are going to be at least our allies, and oftentimes are going to become members of our community.
When you live in a poor neighborhood, you're living in an area where you have to have poor schools. When you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. Poor education, you can only work on a poor-paying job. And that poor-paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. So it's a very vicious cycle.
There's a great protection and there's a benefit and a blessing in following the legacy of the people who've gone before us. Of course, there are going to be specific details to the Muslim struggle in America, but at the end of the day, we have no right to being excluded from the difficulties other people have gone through. We've already been part of a struggle, and we stand on the shoulders of great people, and our struggle is not determined by, defined by, or given permission by the powers that be. When it's all said and done, what do we have to present? After all the politics are done, after the good cop or the bad cop after that's all said and done, what do we have to show people? the work has always been about the people we serve and creating opportunities and experiences for people. That's what it's really about. And it's been very challenging for us to quantify that. It's been challenging for us to share that with people. How do you measure the epiphany that somebody has? How do you measure someone who says, I came to this event, I came to this retreat to decide whether or not I was going to stay Muslim. And because of the experience I had, I'm going to stay Muslim. How do you measure that? What's the dollar value on that? How much does it cost to help someone stay Muslim? The Prophet himself said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, peace be upon him, indeed, you all are given victory and you are provided for because of the weak and the impoverished amongst you. Why is it easier for us to invest in buildings than it is to invest in people? There's something really, really wrong if we can't see that there's something more important about the structure than there is the function and the heart and the soul of community, which is the people. We've got to be thinking long term. We've got to be investing in the future and building institutions and strengthening them so that they're not in this perpetual fundraising situation. They're not in a situation where they're constantly having to go back to the same well, to the same group of people who have been supportive, but actually building those institutions and enabling them to have long-term sustainability. That's all we're trying to do, man. We just want to give our elders a sense that we value what you've done. Thank you. And we're gonna try. We're never gonna be as great as you are, but we're just gonna try to honor your legacy. We're not gonna let the baton fall because you work too hard for it. And yeah, we're weak, we're feeble, man, we're jacked up, but we're gonna try. And that's all we're trying to do, is to let our aunties and uncles and mothers and fathers look at us and say, we gonna be all right. Because the hope is, if we get old enough to have the opportunity to see our children and their children, we wanna be able to look out and say, we gonna be all right. We want to be a community where the doors are always open and the hearts are always open.